Hi, everybody. Raymond Benson here. Welcome to Hooked on Lighter, an episode by episode unpacking of the serial edition of The Hook in the Eye, my Felix Leiter novel. The folks at Ian Fleming Publications and I had this idea to do behind the scenes videos after every episode, much the same way that streaming television series do after one of their episodes drops. Warning, there could be spoilers in this video, so make sure you've read the episode in question before you watch this. Okay, here we go. Episode 1 is dropped. I guess you've read the first 4 chapters of the book. Now, chapter 1, it begins in the present day. That is, well, Felix's present day, which is November 3rd, 1952. The subsequent chapters, the rest of the book, is going to go back in time to the beginning of 1952 and move its way forward throughout the book until it reaches November 3rd. This is a technique I've used a lot in some of my books, and Ian Fleming actually did it a few times. Um, Casino Royale, for example, chapter 1 begins with Bond already at the casino and hotel, and he's reflecting on what's going on. And then chapter 2 goes back in time to M's office. The second book, Live and Let Die, does the same thing. Other You Only Live Twice, I think, does the same thing too. For me, it's just a good way to drop the reader into a mystery that's already there, and hopefully it'll tantalize someone enough to keep going. Um, there are a lot of questions asked in this first chapter. What is it that's that object that's in Felix's hand? How did he get it? Who is the inmate in that federal detention center that he just visited? Who's the woman that did a number on him? What was this journey he undertook that was such a roller coaster? Well, that's the story of the novel. You'll just have to continue on to find out those answers. Lower Manhattan. My description is pretty accurate for that time. City Hall is still there, of course. Pinkerton's detective agency in 1952 was located in a tall building on Nassau Street, which is right off the park to the east. Fulton Market and the seaport is a short walk from that area. Actually, I had a day job in the early 1980s in a building that was right next to Fulton Market. I was down there in that area on a daily basis. And this was around the time I was finishing up the James Bond Bedside Companion. When it was published, I quit that day job. Chapter 2. Okay, we go back in time we go back to St. Petersburg, Florida, where we left Felix at the in Live and Let Die. He's just had his mishap, as he calls it, with the shark. Fleming was never very explicit about Felix's rehabilitation and recovery, nor in his later novels did he really illustrate the kind of prostheses Felix would have. He simply referred to it as a hook. And in the 1960s, when I first read the books, I pictured in my mind a pirate hook, that wouldn't be possible. I found and consulted a prosthetics doctor who knew his history of prosthetics. He confirmed at the time what Felix would have probably had in 1952, uh, given his profession and what had happened. He would have been outfitted by the Veterans Administration and with exactly the kinds of prosthetics I described. You may have seen the movie The Best Years of Our Lives. There's an actor in that, Harold Russell, who was also a veteran. He actually had prostheses for 2 arms. He won an Oscar for supporting actor and also got an honorary Oscar that same evening. Um, Felix would have had very much what that guy had. It wasn't much of a leap from 1946 to 1952. The prosthetics didn't change that much. Um, so yeah, that's what he would have had. I also used a little Bondian imagination. I have Felix have a little compartment built into the lower leg prosthesis where he can stash a dagger. And you know that whenever a weapon is mentioned early in a story, there's a good chance that weapon's going to be used sometime. All right, chapter 3. Felix is back in New York City. Now, Fleming never said if Felix lived in New York City in Live and Let Die, or if he was just up there from Washington, D.C. I decided to place him in an apartment in Greenwich Village, working out of the CIA's New York field office. Granted, I made up the details about that field office. Now, Pinkerton's detective agency, though, my descriptions are pretty accurate. Robert Pinkerton II, he was indeed the grandson of Robert Pinkerton, who founded the detective agency. He did travel back and forth between Chicago and New York. I did take a little liberty with making him a character, but how I describe him is supposedly pretty accurate. Michael Brinkley. He's an invented character as Felix's New York CIA handler. Now, pay attention to some of the things Michael Brinkley says. He'll be making some more appearances in the story, for sure. You'll note that there's some discussion about cars. Felix mentions he has a 1951 Packard, and you Fleming fans are probably wondering, well, what about the Studilac? All I can say is patience, my friends. Chapter 4, we learn what kind of gun Felix is using. I have a good friend, James McMahon, who has been my armorer ever since my Bond novel days. He's helped me a lot through the years on picking weapons and things. He painstakingly researched the period, and he also knew the character of Felix very well. So he picked up two or three weapons that we could choose from, but we both decided that the Ivor Johnson was the best handgun for Felix to use. So thank you, James. Now, our story really gets started with that murder at the Ansonia Hotel. That's the catalyst. Who is this guy who gets killed in his hotel room? Who's the assassin? What's with all that radio equipment? That B-2 suitcase transceiver was a real thing. It was used in World War II, and it's not beyond the realm of possibility that many of them would still be around in the early 50s. Now, the B-2's range was about 50 miles. So, whoever that guy was communicating with must have been also in Manhattan, don't you think? Then there's those cryptic words scribbled on the notepad. What do they mean? The FBI guy, Steve Sandlin, he's an invention, a friend of Felix's from the war. Like Michael Brinkley, he's going to be popping up again in the story later on. Not much else really to say at this point. I do hope you're intrigued enough to keep going. So, hey, this is Raymond Benson signing off. See you in 2 weeks.